Hello, everyone, and welcome to KindaSound Radio. You're here with me, your host, Juliette Bryant, and today I am super excited to have Mark Leib. Now, Mark is a visionary designer and the founder of Sacred Design Studios. Mark specializes in crafting high frequency environments that foster healing, spiritual connection, and harmony with the Earth's energy. Mark draws upon sacred geometry, geobiology, and ancient traditions for harmonic building. And I've heard Mark talk a few times, and every time I've been blown away by his knowledge, his enthusiasm, and I could just listen to him for hours on end. So that's why I've invited him here on the show. Thank you for coming.
Hi, thanks for having me. So yeah, thanks
So,
for the introduction. I do quite a lot of things, and you covered it really well. So for people who haven't heard me talk, I'm a designer, and I'm a practitioner of the European tradition of sacred buildings. So probably some of the listeners may heard of feng shui, which is the Chinese system of basically balancing the land, thinking about how the energy is moving around the land. Every tradition in the world had one of those methodologies, and in Europe, the Celtic people felt the land, understood the land's energies, and built with big stones, megaliths, the big stone circles. And so my tradition ended up it's in France. They ended up with that knowledge of how to work with the land. Then about 1,000 years ago, a lot of highly advanced building knowledge came from the Middle East, and they built on that, no pun intended, on that knowledge base to be able to build cathedrals and churches and all these incredible edifices, where they continued the understanding of recognizing that there was energy and consciousness in the land. And so I weave together ancient sacred geometry, geomancy, which is feeling the earth's energies, dowsing, which probably some of your listeners already do, and then combining those together. And then there's a really very special aspect to the work, which allows me to work with sound frequencies and to be able to create and discover and create the land's own music. And basically, it's when you work with these and you combine them with the earth's energies, then the buildings become alive and real magic happens.
that's so beautiful. I mean, one of the things I love is I remember you talking about the sound a while ago and the sound of the land, because part of my work is I listen to the sound of the plants, so I can hear the frequencies of the plants. And so when I'm making my remedies, I combine them based on that. So it's kind of almost waiting till you hear that symphony and it's like, oh, there we go, we've got the right formula. So
Yeah,
sound is such a powerful thing. And I think, we can all start to tune into the frequency, the vibrations that are all around us.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can do it with plants and the trees, and it's really palpable. The sounds I have are there as well, but they're sort of subsonic. You're like, I know people who build and the elementals there, and they've seen them dancing, with that sound. So we feel them. There's
Mm.
when you connect together, it can be seen, and we feel them, and then we feel joy or happiness, or and it's an emotional thing. So yeah, it's quite an amazing way to work with the land. We have with my partner, we steward a 1 acre medicine garden. So we're in Somerset on the edge of the Mendips, and then we work with the plants. We're growing plants and herbs, making tinctures, but also utilizing those techniques and some of the things we're going to look at today.
Amazing. I'm so excited. But first of all, what got you into this field? Because it's quite far out there, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I've been a designer for 25 years. No, 30. I think 30 now. Like 30. And I'd always done martial arts, and then I was living in Australia, and I found a master, and I did some of you practice, some of the listeners might have know what qigong is. So it's a bit like pranayama, from the Chinese system,
Mm.
and essentially it was a very advanced system, and it basically, I had an awakening experience through the energy work, and I just realized like that there was a whole world out there that I didn't know about. And I started investigating, and I realized that there was a way for me to be able to design, and to be able to design harmony, and to be able to basically heal at the same time, because at that time I was wanting to sort of heal part of my body. So, and it just rolled on, and then I found my teacher, and I've been with him for almost 15 years now, and went through a quite classical training. It was it was taught orally, and I've been doing it for about 6 or 7 years professionally.
Teaching the qigong, is that?
No, sorry, teaching the design energy work. So the qigong was the
Catalyst.
catalyst for the
Yeah.
not just the change in the work, but for my entire life changed.
Yeah.
And so there was layers, and I basically went on a healing journey, and part of the healing journey was the fact that I moved from working commercial design to be able to work with the land, and basically to recognize that there's this incredible sacred design science there that allows us to build, and whether it's a home, or whether it's a garden, or a hospital, any of those spaces can be embodied with these frequencies, which really are the foundation of life.
Amazing. And if you were kind of describing to someone who didn't know, you mentioned sacred geometry. How would you describe that, and how do you use that sacred geometry in the landscape? Because for some people that they might not understand that kind of concept.
So essentially, geometric forms, whether it's whether it's like a circle, or a pyramid. Here I've got a pyramid here, like different forms. Those forms exist as archetypes in higher dimensional spaces. And so when people go on visionary journeys, and they see remarkable, almost psychedelic patterns, all those geometries are manifest. They're part of the divine blueprint of life. And so for millennia, different traditions have recognized those geometries, and then have used them in artwork, in ritual, but also in building. And so if people think about like a stone circle, essentially, a circle as the most basic form, a circle of stones, then and then or maybe something more complex like a labyrinth and other shapes. All of these forms, once you build them on the land, those forms come into resonance with the higher dimensional aspects. So the blueprint in the higher levels comes into resonance with the piece on the land, and then you make a connection. And if you place that geometry onto a high vibration vortex, a crossing point of earth energies, you have an energy point. In the same way you take your phone and plug it into the wall, you take your geometry, plug it into the land, and then you have a high vibration power source. Then you have a pattern which mirrors a high dimensional pattern, and then you place yourself in there, whether it's for a ritual, on your own, or in a group, in a ceremony. And then that place is a place of high coherence, in which the energy pattern, the energy blueprint of the earth comes into resonance of the heavens, which is known as the
Cosmos.
esoteric.
Yeah.
The different frequencies. So you then have a connection point, and that connection point between the two means that you can then contact higher dimensional realms, or you can then connect back into the earth to enhance your fertility of the land, fertility of yourselves, to enhance your own spiritual development or your vitality. And that basically became known as a temple. And so essentially, when you then start to becomes much more complex, you can then encode. If people think about these, for example, incredible temples in India or Egypt, there are all these forms that have been seen and used, and these forms then are energy templates that they're able to then hold energy. So here, I've got a model here of this is the Great Pyramid in Giza. These forms and shapes, the form emits energy waves, but then when you build it with enough weight and enough stone in the right place, it can then impact the land. So the Giza pyramid, for example, is built in the exact center of the Earth's landmass, and then it's big enough to be able to impact the plate tectonics through sound waves, and then does many other jobs. But the geometry itself also resonates in its proportions and its shape with the Earth geometry and many aspects of the relationship between the planet and the sun and the moon and the constellations. So if you then know, if you understand those proportions, all that information, and you encode it into your building's in resonance with all the cosmos. And on certain days of the year, you can then access those energies at a much higher level. That's when you would then have the pharaoh going in there, working with the high priest, because they had access to the highest level of energies coming down onto the planet, so they could channel them and then use them for like really high level activities. That's how you use sacred geometry.
It kind of sounds like advanced qigong in a way, like on the earth, because with qigong, you mentioned that you'd studied it, and I've been studying it for a while, and it's that connection earth and the cosmos and us in the middle, and it's expanding our ability to hold that connection. That's my interpretation of it, so that we can pull more of that cosmic energy through us and more of that earth energy and expand our heart and our being from that space. And it sounds like what you're doing is this advanced qigong on the land and in buildings.
Yeah, it totally is. You're 100% right, because what we're doing is we're becoming that connection point. We're becoming that open source connection between the energy you can draw in through the bottom of your feet, and then you can then open yourself up and draw in through the crown. The structures that I build with the music are do exactly that, and they ground it permanently. So I'm able to build grids around existing buildings, and then it then creates an energy bubble around the building, which then draws in. It's quite an amazing process. Draws in the vibrations and the frequencies of the summer solstice sunrise. So basically, we're using the sun as the maximum vitality of the year to draw that into the building and to create vitality. But then, because with the with the land, you're then able to ground the whole out the building.
Amazing. That's absolutely incredible. Your video has gone. There we go. It's back.
Don't know what that. Yeah, that's the first time I've ever done that. Went back. So
I think sometimes these energies, when we start talking about heightened energies, technology can go funny. So it's amazing. So you were showing people, you were holding up, just as an example of the circles, but you were holding up some tensor rings. Now, are they good things to put? You mentioned, when you find these node points, these crossing points of the energy lines, would it be good to put a tensor ring on that point and then stand in that? Is that a useful application of that, or is that kind of not?
You could do. I mean, I think that I don't think you need to. If people were found, let's say you went to the middle of a stone circle, and then essentially the circles are really interesting. Not even a tensor ring, but any circle will create in the center an energy point, and it resonates with the quality of gold. So any circle. If you use a specialized pendulum that can measure the frequency of gold, you'll always find it in the center. And so the ancient symbol of the sun was a circle with a point in the middle. It's also the same ancient symbol for gold in alchemy. So the sun and gold are connected.
Yeah.
But this is golden quality, and so that's why so many ancient structures would then use the circle, because it would create this point in the center. And so if you go into the center of a stone circle, you're going to then to the center. That point's going to be there, and those stones are going to help that. Also, in the same way that if you have a dome, I've not got a dome here with me, but if you had a dome, it's also going to create that, but above your head. Now, a tensor ring. This is a special device. Maybe some of your listeners have seen this before, so maybe some haven't. This is copper that's been twisted in two directions, so it's twisted on itself, and it works because of something called a qubit. So part of what I was talking about before about, you know, making the pyramids. They did a measurement was discovered. So the measurements super important as well. The measurements are vital because when you understand the measurements of the earth, you can then measure. It's another way to bring your building into alignment. And so this is they've discovered in the Great Pyramid something called the cubit. And the cubit lent the Egyptian Jews, and there are many of these different measurements. There's a royal cubit, the sacred cubit, and this is a royal cubit one. And so then this is a small, different sizes. And essentially what happens is that so these were created and invented by a guy called Slim Sperling in I think the 90s, who was this amazing American geomancer. He had like a cowboy hat and a big beard. He looked incredible. And what he did was he created these, and these create a torsion field. They create an energy field. So the pyramids also create these fields in which they harness spin, the way that atoms spin. And so these can have many uses. Now, you could put one of these on top of a vortex that someone finds, but it's going to do the same thing. So you know, if someone finds one of those places and it's like it just feels great, well then that's going to be good. But if you find one that's close by, you can then add to it and then use that. For example, I use this one around my water. I have one under my water container. I have a smaller one on the spout, and then I use that as part of my water structuring process.
Nice.
But my water container isn't on a vortex. You know, that is, you know, there's the different ways you can do it. So I think that like you could, for example, you could put one on there if you want, if you wanted to have a like an altar, for example. It will boost it, but you don't need to. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
So
But
that's a great idea, putting a tensor ring underneath like a water butt for your water. Would you put it under or in it?
This goes underneath it. I have inside. I have various quartz and shungite. There's some shungite here, quartz crystals and shungite. This is a smaller one. My partner, when she has a headache, she put this on her hair, and the headaches go away every time.
Amazing.
This is really.
We've got different size ones all around the house for different frequencies, and I quite often wear it like a bit of a crown. Just go around wearing it. But they really do. We used one for my mother-in-law when she had a bad knee, and it really helped with that as well, bring the inflammation down. They're incredible. My brain can't quite comprehend how it's working, but
well, it's working through. Well, number one is the measurement. It's called they're based on these cubit dimensions. I can't remember. I think it's something like 20.05 of in 20.05 inches or something like that is a cubit. Can't quote me on that. And then, but that measurement is a whole number fraction, or is a whole number ratio of the circumference of the Earth. So, all the ancient traditions would build using those measurements as another way to then bring their structures and their places into alignment. So, for example, it might be, let's say, using a measurement that was 432 millionths 1/44 of the Earth's circumference. Then you've got the 432, and then you then start to get like 216 and 72, all those harmonic numbers. So when you start to use that in a smaller scale, essentially you then almost think that this becomes like as a fractional circumference of the Earth, if that makes sense. So if the Earth's sphere, the circumference is the central line around. So it's in harmonic resonance with the Earth. And then what Slim Sperling did, which was remarkable, he then twisted it. So actually the length would be about this long, turned it over, and then twisted it on itself. And it has this double twist. So it's like a Mobius loop. So it's twisted back on itself. So there's no beginning and no end. So it's an infinite loop. And then it creates then it's positive that it's called something called a scalar wave, which is, so it's not electromagnetic, sometimes called longitudinal. So it's a higher frequency wave field, which creates spin. Yeah. So it's a fantastic tool, amazing innovation.
You said something, you were talking about this gold, the central point. And when we were in Peru, I was recently there, and we were walking around Machu Picchu, and I saw this one spot, and I was like, what is over there? Because coming off this circle of stones was this golden dome. And then next to it was this flat stone, and it was pulsing. No one else could see this, but this was what I was perceiving, was what I was feeling. So I said, what is that? And I was there with David Wolf, and he said that is the most ancient part. This is a Lemurian stone circle that was part of it. And so when you were talking, instantly the golden dome of this part just jumped into my mind. And I guess because it was a circle, maybe that's why it was emitting that golden dome from it.
Well, it'll be several things. I talked about the grid before. I think when the camera went off, essentially, um, when I build with the land's own music, and we connect it with the land's own vortex energies, you get a dome. You get domes happening, and they're like a blue color. So if some people might have know what orgone is,
Yeah.
orgonite. So essentially, it's very close to that. When you then have that the technology where you're working with stone, and where I've not been to Machu Picchu, but its location would be placed on a very, very powerful complex of vortex energies in a very particular location. And
Yeah.
so this is part of a much bigger conversation, not for today. We can do it another day. There's lots of different energy lines. So people may have heard of ley lines, but there's lots of different sorts of earth energy lines and
Yeah.
different grids. And what happens is that those grids all overlay. Like, for example, if I got these pens here, there's like they overlay, and there's many grids. And then in a place like Machu Picchu, where in the mountains we've got lots of energy lines crossing, there can be dozens and dozens of lines crossing, and you got a lot
Yeah.
of power there. And then you get particular combinations of lines have different qualities, and one of those can create and those vortex can have different colors. And so if you've got a particular combination of lines, you can then get like a gold quality. And so
Okay.
there's a relationship from that to at sunrise and sunset.
Hmm.
So it's a very special time. It's also when the sort of the vitality, or the in Taurus, or the yang energy is rising, and then even then it's falling. That at that point there's like there's a relationship between the sun and the Earth's magnetic field, and you get this very special golden quality that happens. So that's why if you're sort of up at 4 a.m. and then you're doing meditation, and that's sort of heading towards sunrise, there's this gold and sort of quality. There's actually it correlates to a particular frequency, one of those we talked about, in terms of that 72 144,
Yeah.
that harmonics. And there's a frequency correlation between the Earth's rotation,
Hmm.
the magnetic field, and the sun, which is providing sunlight, the
Hmm.
visible spectrum, but it's also providing um, uh, solar prana, the energetic aspect. And when these things come together, and when the Earth's rotating, you get that sunrise, you get that gold coherence. You then get like a beautiful coherent field
Yeah.
of like golden quality. That's why gold has always been so revered, because it has that quality. So at the center of the circle you have gold, and then alchemy was about transforming. They wanted to transform like lead to gold, but what they're really meaning is they want to transform or well, I got it wrong there. I'll stay with transform. I haven't got that one wrong for a while. I'm not going to try it again. You're trying to transform something that's based to a higher frequency, and to do that you need the etheric energy. You need, that comes from the sun, the highest amount of that we have naturally.
Mm.
But then the etheric technology, if you look at any of your recent superhero films of the last decade or two, and got people flying around as thunderbolts coming out of their hammers and stuff, that's etheric technology. and so the philosopher's stone
Yeah.
that, you know, that sort of that technology that transforms into gold, it's both a metaphor for transforming ourselves to a higher dimensional state, or also transforming lower level, lower spin, low vibration materials into a higher dimensional state, which we can then use for our own spiritual transformation or for other purposes. And so that's why gold was revered. And so what you're bringing it back to Machu Picchu, that quality of that location, of that particular oldest point, which they were saying is sort of the old Lemurian circle, they would have recognized that quality as being, as that point, very special golden point, and they will then revered that, and then using the right stones, the right proportions. For example, if you're using granite, was the classical material to use, because you've got quartz inside of it, and quartz is a silicon. When it gets compressed, there's something called the piezoelectric effect. That means that in compression, that all those tiny quartz crystals will create electric charge, and that creates more charge and more of a charge field. So when we go to somewhere like Machu Picchu, there's all the energy and all the stone, and also it's incredibly hard. You know, it lasts for millennia. And so the ancient builders recognized all of these things, and that's why they were building with big stones, because it allowed them to put weight onto the land. They're permanent, but also they're recognizing those stones get charged with sunlight as well, and then also the move, and then that micro movement creates vibrations, which then keeps the charge going in the structure, in the land, to create that higher vibrational field. So you've then got,
it's incredible, isn't it?
it's what they've had discussed was amazing. So they've basically gone, this is how we can make electricity, and then if we then put this in its place and we put it in a circle, we're going to get gold in the middle. And then if we choose the middle as a point that's got this gold energy, we're going to go there and have the most amazing rituals, you know, that we've ever felt. And people are going to come from, you know, from all over Peru, you know, on the right day to feel these celestial energies. And then even if it's on top of a mountain and it's outdoors, it then literally becomes a place where heaven and earth are connected. And so all of the sacred mountains and the sacred world trees that connect heaven and earth were all based upon these locations.
It's phenomenal. So what I'd like to talk about with you is how can we bring this kind of energy into, I think one of the things that's so important is, you know, the growing of food, the growing of herbs, and us all taking more action to empower ourselves and our health with growing things in a different frequency, in this vibration, like you were talking about, so that when we consume these foods, when we connect to the earth, we can expand into this higher frequency that is coming into the earth. You know, the earth's frequency is shifting, and I feel like we need these tools to help us shift with it. And I feel like the food and the herbs is all a big part of how we can transform ourselves. So what can we do to really start doing this on the land?
Okay, so there's lots we can do. So there's been a revival of something called electroculture, which has got very big in about the last 5 years. Fantastic after everyone got locked down and realized that we needed to be able to sort of be more sovereign and grow our own food and utilize the land. So it's an amazing thing that's happened, but it is about 100 years old. There was research done in France about 100 years ago, and it all got buried, literally. Like they started to have incredible results using electricity and using natural electromagnetism. But then what happened is the chemical companies appeared, and it got buried, no pun intended. and so there were some pioneers who recognized, who developed some of these things. The key one is a guy called Victor Schauberger. Have you heard of him? Yeah. Now that's it. The water work, but he also was the pioneer in using bronze and copper. So he actually worked with bronze. He created did lots of experiments, and I mean, he worked with vortexing amazing thing. This is water vortexing, which he viewed from the way that like rivers worked. He actually ended up building anti-gravity aircraft for the Nazis.
Wow.
From that. Anyway, that's another podcast. But what he discovered was he designed the most beautiful plow you ever seen. It's like almost like organic shapes, like my hands are moving. He made it from bronze. And what he discovered is that with bronze, and I've got a tool here. So this looks like copper. It's actually bronze. So it's 95% copper, 5% tin. Makes it very, very strong. And this tool, when using, he discovered that it didn't cause friction. So iron tools, they create friction in the soil, which dries the soil out. Iron tools also, they can oxidize and create rust.
Yeah.
Iron tools also then can negate the electric charge that comes up from the groundwater. So basically you put your plant in the ground, it wants the water. Oh, I've gone again. It's so strange. Sorry.
No worries.
Yeah. So the tools basically, sorry, the bronze tools avoided the problem where iron tools create a sparking and then can basically reduce the quality of the soil. And so he basically created this plow and created so much new food, and the chemical companies said, no, we don't want it because we want to use chemicals. Now, what's happened is that all of that knowledge then flowed into the electroculture, which has created lots of wonderful methods. So the most basic form is this. So this is a stick, and it's got copper wire wrapped around it. So this is sort of essentially the pretty much the foundation of electroculture. Essentially, it's an antenna, and it's copper. So copper is used because it's very conductive. Gold's more conductive, but super expensive. To go higher up into the atmosphere, there's atmospheric charge. And so this antenna is going to sort of draw that down to the plant. So it's not going to take it far, and it's not going to bring, and it's very, very low amounts of charge, electrical charge, but it's enough to be able to enhance that plant and its growth. So essentially, if we lose our charge, and we lose charge as we go, as our cells deplete, we don't have the charge that's when disease happens. And so this is a way to charge up in the same way that when we do our qigong, we're charging up.
Yeah.
So we keep coming back to that principle of sort of connecting heaven and earth in different ways.
Because also we're batteries, aren't we? We're electromagnetic beings, and we recharge by being on the earth. That's why the whole grounding thing, being barefoot on the earth, allows us to recharge. Because if we're inside on concrete, rubber shoes, or that, we're not allowing that electromagnetic charge to build up. Can we do electroculture on ourselves as well? Can we get a copper antenna and stick it in the ground and hold onto it? Or do we go under a pyramid?
Well, you can do those things. People do use pyramids, and I've got to say that there are problems. There are problems that I have not got a metal one here. So this is the pyramid. People do use these, and this is a pyramid. What I would say is there's an awful lot of waves that these pyramids create that probably I would avoid using.
Okay.
People do use copper pyramids, and copper is very conductive. What happens is that the pyramids create very, very advanced waveforms, and in the short term, they can be beneficial to consciousness. But in the long term, if the pyramids are not corrected, they then can create waves that can have negative effects.
Okay.
Yeah.
But not on growing, because if you use them for growing, is that
correct?
Is that all right? Yeah.
Okay. So we did a test on our land where we used this pyramid. So you can see this is the pyramid from Giza. This is the same size. This is a pyramid that was created about 30 years ago in Russia, and this is it creates a torsion field, like a little bit like the rings. And we use these, and we had a test where we put our plants under this proportion pyramid, and we had double the growth rates and 1.5 times the speed, the volume. That's because it then creates a wave that's beneficial to the plants. You know, so we did an amazing test. We had five different conditions going. One of the conditions was we gave love to the plant. The other one that plants came under this. Love actually came second.
Amazing.
Yeah, so I think if you were just sit there and constantly give love, it would have beaten the pyramid. It's just that the pyramid was doing it all the time. So that's I mean, we can talk about these devices, but we really want to be recognizing that they're conscious and alive. And if we give them love and when we work with them, then they're going to really benefit. And this is another thing that people can use. So this is the standard twisting of copper. This is a very simple device that people can buy on Etsy. It's a cone. But the cone basically is close to the golden ratio. And what happens is when you put copper around it, you can make this spiral like that. You can make these spirals and put them together. One brings energy down, one brings energy up. So you can put this in a plant, and we've had great work to bring plants back to life using this.
Wow.
And then this is another one. This is even simpler. This is just a piece of copper wire. And it's open, so it's not together. It's been cut. Actually makes a circuit, and then what you do is you get a piece of wood like this, put a hole in it, and then you get two of those. You put one like that, and that's all it is. It's super simple to make. You sort of just drill a bit of wood, and then what you do is you get this, and you put it in the ground, so that the open piece there is facing south. So if I hold it here, that will be south here and north there. And then what you do is you have it so that it's at an angle of about 30 degrees. And put this around the plants. This creates a electromagnetic field around the plants, and they grow really well as well. So this is another way, rather than that sort of antenna. These were created by a researcher in the 50s called Lakovsky, and he recognized that even this incredibly simple device is actually a very powerful circuit. So they're really wonderful as well. There's also this is slightly more advanced. So a researcher called Yannick Van Doorn, who's from Belgium, who's one of the top electroculture guys in the world. Basically, what he does, he's used magnetism, because we've been talking about electricity. So these are like little magnets, ferrite magnets, and where there's an electric field, there's a magnetic field, and they're always at 90 degrees to each other. And we're electric beings, but we also need magnetism, so DC magnetic fields we want. So fortunately, we live in buildings where there's AC current going at super fast speeds. That's why we get sick when we're in buildings that are not protected. But if we can work with magnetism, then things grow better. So what he did was he got some magnets, and he covered them in beeswax. They're very bees are incredibly magical creatures.
And sacred, they're filled with all the geometry, aren't they?
That's it. And we know that honey lasts for hundreds of years. It's a magical substance. But the wax itself also is very, very powerful. You can protect things with it. It insulates. It's an insulator, but it's organic. And inside this, there's a tiny one of these.
Okay.
So what he did was he made that up.
Yeah.
And then basically he gets aluminium, and the aluminium basically gets pushed through it, and he puts it in the ground, and then this then creates a very, very weak magnetic field.
So would it be in the ground, like upside down, like which way direction?
Flat in the ground.
Yes. Okay. So would you bury it or just place it?
Yeah, you bury it. Yeah, you put it in the ground. We haven't done it yet in the field, where we can try it out. So essentially, he's had amazing results with it in Holland, in Belgium. Oh, I've gone again.
It's incredible. It's such interesting stuff, that it's so simple, really.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it. So we're not, you don't need to have an electrical engineering degree. These are really simple things. There's, and it's what's remarkable is all this knowledge that, that was hidden, has now become available. So this is really just, you have one of these, you have a long line, put it in the ground, it loops back on itself, and you're then basically bringing magnetism into the ground. I think one thing I'd say with the spirals is people might see sort of these sort of size of little spirals. I didn't have any results with these. These were just too small.
Okay.
Basically, the bigger you can go,
The
the
better.
higher you can get. I mean, some people do 6, 7 foot, 8 foot antennas. You can also people get really creative. You can also start to sort of put spirals like this on them. This is a bit like inspired by sort of Nikola Tesla spirals. So you can start to sort of add all these things up and attract. So essentially, we're using here. We're using. You can see here. We've almost got like a circuit board pattern. So when you start to recognize that things like labyrinths, and those are circuit boards in the landscape, that's how you get the resonance, the geometry back to this. And this is basically how we can use those geometries to be able to bring that electricity from the atmosphere into the plants, as it's also then going to help the groundwater come up as well, because this is conductive. So I think it's two processes. It's actually helping, because Schauberger has showed us with the copper and the bronze, and then if people are using, and if you're, that's why the land likes the copper. As much, this works, but we wouldn't leave this in the land all the time because it's aluminium. So, but it doesn't work with copper. So, but it will enhance the plants will grow better once it's done. Take it out of the land, so we don't want the aluminium in the land. But generally, the land's going to accept this. So if you think about like anywhere there's high power lines, or there's metal fencing, steel and iron, the land really just doesn't want it there. But like the coppers, the copper's fine. There's a difference. And also, I'll just end on this. This is an innovation by Yannick Van Doorn. We've not made it yet. I'm in the process of making one. So we recognized that the iron tools weren't really congruent with the life force of the soil. Basically, got a piece of copper, and then put beechwood inside, filled it with beechwood, and then sort of drilled it into the handle of, like, say, of your spade.
Yeah.
And it negated about 80% of the problems. So this is something I'm going to try this year. So
that's incredible. Because
really,
the copper tools are quite expensive and they're not so steady. We've got copper tools for the garden, but for some jobs, the copper's just a bit too sensitive. But I guess the bronze is harder, you said.
yeah. So this is I got this from Germany. So this is the same company that
Is that
was
implosion research, the implosion research device company?
no this PKS, which
Okay.
it might be a different group. So this is the company that basically followed Schauberger.
Yeah.
So this is German. So this is bronze. So essentially 95% copper, 5% tin. It's not as hard. Interesting. It's not as hard as steel or iron, but it's stronger. So it's and it lasts longer, and so there's no friction. So pure. So that's why the sort of the bronze age tools work, because it is remarkably strong. Like I've got a piece of copper here. It's really soft, but this it feels like iron.
It looks great. I might have to invest in some of those because we've got the copper tool, and we've noticed a big difference when using copper tools in the garden on the ability to grow things, and it feels less, as you said, the copper doesn't break up the electromagnetic charge of the earth like the iron does. And I notice that, and I can, because I'm sensitive to these things, I can feel it more, and you can feel the harmony of the earth so much more with the copper tools. So it's brilliant.
So if anyone wants to get those, and I don't make any money from these people, it's called kupferspuren.at, and I'll share the link with you.
Amazing. That's brilliant. I'll definitely be getting those. Mark, you've got so much knowledge, and I could literally talk to you for so long about all of the stuff that you know. If people want to know more, if they want to work with you more, what's the next step they could take?
Well, they can go to my website, which is markleib.com, markleib.com. And I work with people in different ways. I've got a program called the Conscious Property Blueprint, where I work with homes. And I also work with wellness businesses. So whatever your needs, we can work with a home to raise the vibration, to create a big solar energy bubble around the house. I do special projects where I work with architects, I work with landscape people, working on the land, building medicine gardens, or building structures. I also teach as well, and we do workshops, and we teach people some of the how to work with land energies. Sometimes we're teaching how to dowse. Sometimes we'll build a stone circle or a labyrinth. People can come and they can really get involved in that, and everyone loves that because it's, you know, especially energetic people. Then we work with the geometry, and usually what happens is they start with geometry, they're like, how is this making this happen? So that's really wonderful. So I love to do that. What else? I have a program in which if someone wants to begin the journey, and really it's one of the biggest things is removing the blocks, whether it's for the land to grow, you know, to make the land be more productive, whether it's just where people are living, people get, the the land and buildings can hold charge, they can hold memories, they can hold karmic imprints. So one of the things we do to begin with is look at the property and then clear that. So it's called clear the geopsychic imprints, clear the geopsychic stress. And so that's a really great way to begin, and then get a feeling for the building. I usually work with that first. And if anyone wants to get involved and want to be part of that, I'm going to offer everyone a discount for that. So people want to sort of get a feel for the work, please drop me an email at hello@markleib.com, and they can just mention the podcast and they'll get a discount on the work. Yeah.
Thank you. That's very kind. And we'll put all the links below as well. So
we'll tell people where they can get all, where they can get the rings from and all of these things. These are easy. You can get these on Etsy really easily now. A couple of years ago, you couldn't. I mean, it's things like, I think, it's really simple things. We'll make a list for everyone. It's
amazing.
like getting real copper, and yeah.
Amazing. It's been wonderful. And maybe you'll come back again and we can have another chat and go further into some of the side topics we started to talk about, because it would be brilliant.
I would love to. And hopefully we won't have a camera problem. But as we said at the beginning, we're talking about high vibration things, and I've not had this happen before. It's so...
I've had it quite often with different things, when you start to get into conversations, sometimes it can all just go, sound can go, all kinds of things can happen. So but we were able to get through and get the message through, so that's the main thing. So thank you so much, Mark, for being here on KindaSound Radio.
Thanks so much. Wonderful. I'd love to come back and we can talk about more of the energies another time. Thanks everyone.
Amazing. Thank you for listening.